What has been the American pastime even before baseball became a sport? The answer: shooting guns. America was one with the use of firearms, and citizens haven't let go of the symbol of freedom that it represents, much like the American flag. With nearly a 100% ratio of guns to citizens, have we as a nation become too accustomed to them? Perhaps we are becoming desensitized to the mass shootings in our country? This matter is debatable. Many would argue so and urge the severity of putting more gun regulations into place to make our nation a safer place, while others, including myself, think that gun regulations have gone too far in many states, such as California and New York. Firearms are an unalienable right of the people of America and should not be as tightly regulated for the mentally healthy and nonviolent citizens as it currently is. Jacob Davison, a Times Magazine news editor, refutes why government receiving strong gun control over firearms would work in his article, a Criminologist's Case Against Gun Control. Even though we are guaranteed the right to bear arms by the Second Amendment in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights, many are worried that firearm violence is on the rise due to the media and are looking for solutions. A gun ban is not the answer, however. This is a misconception that the media loves to exploit. The facts. Every 10 million firearms are sold, every year 10 million firearms are sold to American citizens, while gun violence since the early 90s has been on the decline. Surprisingly, 2 out of every 3 deaths due to a gun is suicide, not murders or gang violence. A ban of certain assault rifle features, such as a pistol grip or an extended magazine, would make little different in a gun's functionality. Many political leaders have implemented programs, such as gun buybacks, to try and limit the amount of weapons on the street. This is a good idea because many of the guns that they get from buybacks actually are the illegal guns, and people would rather swap those unregistered firearms for cash money. Although many leaders have concluded that gun buybacks show very little success, it's still a good way and it makes the community feel safer. Although requiring a background check before purchasing a gun is a good idea, it is not a realistic solution due to the lack of universal registry of guns. The process of limiting even small details of guns can too easily become a slippery slope. The problem isn't guns, it's the people that are mentally unfit and make stupid decisions while handling these guns that is the problem. Americans have a legal obligation to possess firearms. As earlier stated, we have the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to bear arms. Josh Sager, writer for the Progressive Cynic, promotes implementing a gun ban in his article Refuting Anti-Gun Control Arguments. Josh begins with shocking facts to really hit home the scary reality of our nation. 25 people are murdered with firearms each day. 25. If guns were banned, gun-toting Americans love to argue that these murders would just be committed with a more domestic weapon, such as chainsaws, knives, cars, stuff such as that. Although the ability to kill someone with a pair of scissors is still there, guns are manufactured to purposefully inflict damage and to eliminate threat. In America, there is almost 9 guns to every 10 citizens, much more than any other developed nation anywhere around the world. To me, this is something to actually pride myself on. It ensures that we keep our freedoms. But today, some say that society no longer has the need for guns because the Second Amendment was written so that each state would have a standing army. However, states now have they have hoarded guns, and they would actually be able to divvy them out, supposedly, if the federal government ever came up against the states. There's a whole idea there. I believe that we need guns more than ever, however, to refute Sager. It cannot be denied statistically that guns do indeed pose a threat if handled carelessly, and they can do a lot of damage. Many argue that the risk for normal citizens owning a gun is too high. They're not trained like the military. I wholeheartedly disagree with this, however. I think that once you prove that you can be safe with a gun, you absolutely have the right to own one, to keep it in your home and to defend yourself. I'm sure that nearly all adults have heard of the Sandy Hook shooting. This is a really tragic mass shooting that happened at Sandy Hook High School. Um, and this kind of has brought up the whole idea of keeping guns away from kids, which I think is a fantastic idea. I don't think that guns shouldn't be in the home of people that have children, but I do think that parents should lock them up and be responsible, because if you do take on the role of owning a firearm in this nation, you absolutely should be held to higher standards with being safe and not committing crimes. I would not be opposed at all if this nation would prohibit those classified as mentally unhealthy um, to possess a firearm, people that are likely to harm other people or themselves. Convicted felons already cannot own a firearm. I am, however, opposed to the long waiting periods that come with guns. Not so much in states such as Idaho, but California, for instance. Even to buy a shotgun is a 10-day waiting period, plus all the paperwork and background filings. I don't want the government knowing anything more about me. This is a statement I use a lot when I'm talking to people about the government doing background checks on me. They do a whole lot of looking up taxes and stuff like that I don't think is really required for actually owning a gun. I think more mental stability should be looked at, and criminal records, instead of just a whole bunch of stuff that seems to make no sense. I think instead of worrying about those going through the proper process, that people should be more worried about those getting guns illegally, seeing as how those are more often used in violent acts, such as premeditated murder, gun violence, stuff such as that. A recent survey was done by Mr. Davison. He went to a prison and interviewed many of the people in there for gun violence, so mainly gun violence, due to gangs. And he said that almost no prison inmates say that they were licensed to carry the gun that they had. They got it illegally. Yes, there's almost a 9 to 10 ratio of guns to citizens. However, I see this as a good thing. I'd like to talk about this idea that people don't kill people, guns kill people, or guns don't kill people, people kill people, that whole statement. I would like to put forward this scenario. So whenever there's a gun shooting, we think, oh, it's the gun's fault. That's how the media puts it. However, what happens with all the drunk driving that happens? Who gets blamed? The drunk driver. He's the one that decided to get into the vehicle, and he ended up killing someone. The car is never blamed. No one ever says, oh, people are getting killed out on the streets, we should limit who can drive, kind of stuff. No. The person is blamed. So why then, when a person decides to shoot another person, is the gun blamed instead of the person's actions? I think the bigger issue in this nation is people not taking responsibility for their actions. It's always someone else's fault. It's always someone else's job. America is fascinated by guns ever since the beginning. To wrap up and conclude, in the end, I don't think that there is a solution that would satisfy our entire nation, due to everyone having polar opposite ideas on the matter. Personally, I feel that a more lax allowance of guns and a stricter purchasing policy, such as for the mentally unfit, I think that this would be very beneficial. This would make it way harder for a criminal to get a hold of a gun, and it doesn't hurt the average American, the good guys just trying to defend themselves. The direction that America is going right now is very scary, and I hope that we can get in front of this curve before we end up losing our rights to have guns at all. Thanks.